My name is Elena Ward, and for most of my life, I believed that if I worked hard enough, loved deeply enough, and stayed quiet long enough, my family would finally see me, value me, and choose me. But everything changed the night my own mother publicly stripped away what was rightfully mine and struck me across the face in front of everyone I loved. That night broke something, but not in the way they expected. It awakened me. This is the story of how I stopped begging for love and began reclaiming my life. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. For most of my life, I tried to earn something that should have been freely given, my parents' approval. I spent years believing that if I succeeded, if I worked hard, if I made myself useful, they would finally look at me with pride. But standing under the soft, warm glow of the lights in the garden room of Belmere Bistro in Silvergate, Oregon, surrounded by laughter, delicate floral centerpieces, and the gentle murmur of celebration, I let myself believe, just for a moment, that none of that mattered anymore. Tonight belonged to me, or at least I thought it did. The room was bathed in the faint scent of roses and vanilla, a fragrance chosen to feel comforting, intimate, like the beginning of something beautiful. Marcus Alvarez, my fiancé of 4 months, stood beside me, his hand resting lightly at the small of my back. Tall, calm, and steady, Marcus had become the quiet harbor to my restless spirit. He worked as a documentary film editor, a man who believed in truth, clarity, and the beauty in what is real. With him, I felt seen in ways I had never experienced before. With him, I finally felt enough. Our engagement dinner was filled with the people in our lives who genuinely supported us. Lana Kim, my best friend since college, and my maid of honor flashed me a bright smile from across the room. Marcus's parents lifted their glasses toward us with warmth and affection. Their approval was effortless and sincere. And then there was my family. At a table near the center sat my mother, Marianne, whose impeccable posture and frozen smile always felt more judgmental than welcoming. My father, Gerald, stared down into his glass as if searching for courage he'd misplaced decades ago. And beside them sat Sophie, my younger sister, 25 years old, and still convinced that the world owed her something simply for existing. She scrolled on her phone, making no effort to look engaged, uninterested in anything that didn't revolve around her. I forced myself to breathe. Tonight was about joy, not resentment. I would not let the old wounds bleed open here. Then Marianne rose from her chair and tapped her wine glass lightly. The room felt quiet. For a fleeting moment, hope flickered in my chest like a candle in a draft. Maybe tonight would be different. Maybe she would acknowledge me, not as a burden or a disappointment, but as her daughter. I would like to congratulate my beautiful daughter Elena and her fiancé Marcus. She began, her voice smooth and practiced. I wish you both a life of love, happiness, and prosperity. Polite applause followed. Marcus gave my hand a gentle squeeze. For a second, I let myself relax. But Marianne continued, her voice turning crisp, sharp enough to draw blood. I also have an announcement. The room held its breath. After careful consideration, Gerald and I have decided that the $60,000 we set aside for Elena's wedding will now be given to her sister, Sophie. The sound in the room died instantly. I felt heat creep up my neck as disbelief twisted inside my chest. Surely I misheard. I laughed softly, incredulously. Mom, what are you talking about? That money is already mine. You and Dad transferred it to me years ago. It's been saved, planned, and allocated for this wedding. Her expression didn't change. If anything, her eyes turned colder. Sophie needs it more urgently now. Her wedding will be soon, too. We feel this is the best choice for the family. No, I said, voice quiet but firm. You can't just take it. That fund has been in my personal account since I was 19. I've used part of it already, Marcus, and I budgeted everything with it. This wedding depends on it. Sophie shoved her chair back and stood, arms crossed as though she were the wronged one. Stop being selfish, Elena. You knew I needed help months ago. You never once offered to share. My jaw tightened because I saved responsibly, Sophie. You had the same amount. You spent yours carelessly. That isn't my responsibility to fix. Marianne's face darkened. Your sister lives with passion and heart. You've always been rigid, cold, calculating. You think saving money makes you better? No, I replied evenly. It makes me responsible. The distance between us vanished in a flash. Marianne's hand flew before I even processed it, striking me hard across the face. The slap echoed, an ugly, sharp sound that sliced through the stunned silence of the restaurant. My cheek burned. My eyes stung. But I did not look away. You don't get to hit me, I said quietly, every word deliberate. Not anymore. Somewhere behind me, someone whispered urgently into a phone. Police. Assault. Restaurant address. Marcus stepped closer, shielding me with his arm, tension radiating through him like static. My father stayed seated, silent, as always. Sophie stared, wide-eyed, not with guilt, but with fear of consequences. Minutes later, the restaurant doors opened, and 2 officers entered. One approached me gently. Miss, are you the one who was assaulted? Yes, I answered, voice steady even as my heart trembled. Marian tried to explain, tried to act composed, still convinced she could talk her way out of anything. But they cuffed her. The woman who spent her life guarding her image was walked through that restaurant, humiliated, exposed, not by me but by her own choices. As the officers escorted her into the cool night air, I felt my world shift, not shatter, but transform. For the first time, I was not the one apologizing. I was not the one shrinking. I was not the one breaking. I was the one standing. And I realized something with unwavering clarity. This was only the beginning. I would not be their victim anymore. That night, after the restaurant emptied, and the soft glow of the event lights was replaced by the quiet chill of the street outside, Marcus and I walked to the car in silence. His arms stayed around my shoulders, protective, steady, grounding. When we got home, I pressed an ice pack gently to my cheek and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The skin was swollen, red, and tender to the touch, but the injury wasn't what held my gaze. It was my eyes. They looked older, like something had finally cracked open, not broken, but revealed. I had always known my relationship with my mother was dangerous, only I had spent years cushioning the truth with excuses. She's under stress. She doesn't know how to express love. She's doing her best. But standing there, fingers trembling against my own bruised skin, I realized something devastatingly simple. She knew exactly what she was doing. And she always had. Marcus leaned against the doorway, watching me quietly. You don't have to be strong right now, he said, his voice soft, almost gentle. Not with me. The tears came before I could stop them. Not weak tears, not frantic ones, just quiet, tired release. He stepped forward, letting me fold into him, my forehead pressed to his chest, his hand tracing slow circles along my back. For the first time in my life, someone was holding me without expecting me to earn it. I just don't understand. I whispered. Why is it so easy for them to throw me away? Marcus rested his chin against my hair. Because you don't need them. And they hate that. The truth settled heavy and sharp, but it fit. Over the next few weeks, the world returned to its routine exterior, while inside, my life shifted into something I could only describe as emotional turbulence. My mother was charged and released on bail 2 days after the incident. My father said nothing, not even a text. Sophie posted vague, dramatic quotes on Instagram about family betrayal and loyalty. It was all so predictable, so performative. I tried to focus on work. Being a UI/UX designer meant long hours behind screens, smoothing interfaces, crafting user flows, and translating frustration into clarity. Normally, it soothed me, but now, even that felt heavy. One afternoon, I came home to find an envelope in the mailbox. Thick, formal. My name typed neatly across the front. Inside, a lawsuit, filed by my own parents. They were suing me for control of the $60,000 fund. The fund that had been transferred to me. The fund that legally belonged to me. The fund they wanted back only because Sophie had wasted hers. I stood on the porch, reading the document again and again, the cold winter air burning in my lungs. They didn't just want to hurt me. They wanted to punish me for living a life they could not control. I hired Tasha Green, a razor-sharp attorney known for being relentless in court. She reviewed my financial records, the transfer history, the terms, the bank statements, all of it. Then she looked up, calm and sure. They have no legal standing, she said. This is not about law. This is psychological warfare. They are betting on pressure, fear, exhaustion. They think you'll fold. My jaw tightened. Something cold and certain sparked inside me. I won't. The preliminary hearing arrived quicker than expected. The courtroom was small, fluorescent lit, and uncomfortably quiet. Sophie walked in first, wearing white like she wanted the world to mistake her for innocent. My mother followed, chin lifted, eyes cold, mouth set in that familiar line of superiority. My father trailed behind them, shoulders sunken, gaze glued to the floor. They didn't look like a family. They looked like a formation, a coordinated wall against me. Marcus sat beside me, his hand resting on my knee, steady, grounding, present. When Sophie spoke on the stand, she performed. Every sigh calculated, every tear manufactured. She painted herself as misunderstood. She claimed the funds were meant for education, that I had twisted the intention, that I hoarded stability while she struggled. She even suggested Marcus influence me, because God forbid the idea that my choices belonged to me. But then Tasha stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't attack. She simply asked questions. Did you use your funds for school? Yes. How many years of school? 2.5. What happened to the remainder? Sophie hesitated. I invested in myself. Tasha nodded politely as though receiving useful information. Even though everyone in the room knew invested in myself meant spent recklessly. And the luxury vehicle, Tasha added. Sophie's mouth fell tight. That was part of. Necessity? Tasha finished gently. For education? Sophie's silence was the only answer anyone needed. The judge didn't rule that day, but the tone in the courtroom had changed. The performance had cracked. Reality had bled through. My mother refused to meet my eyes when we walked out. My father still didn't look up. Marcus wrapped his arms around me the moment we cleared the courthouse steps. You did everything right, he murmured. But I knew it wasn't over. People like my mother don't accept losing. They escalate. And she did. The sabotage began quietly, small rumor ripples spreading through extended family. Then it escalated. One afternoon, I got a call from my cousin, voice uneasy and sympathetic. Your mom told everyone the wedding was canceled because Marcus cheated. My heart dropped. Within hours, emails supposedly from me circulated, announcing the wedding was off. Grief, betrayal, emotional collapse. It was all fabricated, crafted, sent to dozens of relatives and acquaintances. Then Marcus approached me with his phone, jaw clenched tight. There's more. Sophie had texted him doctored photos, badly edited, laughably fake images of me, with another man. She sent them to his parents, too, hoping to fracture us, to rot our foundation, to ruin me in the only place I was truly loved. But Marcus handed me his phone with steady eyes. Not angry, not shaken. She wants to break us, he said softly. She won't. That was the moment I realized something irreversible. They weren't attacking my finances. They weren't attacking my plans. They were attacking my identity, my worth, my relationships, my future. This wasn't jealousy. This was erasure. And I would not allow it. We secured our accounts. We contacted close friends and relatives personally. We clarified. We corrected. But credibility is fragile. Once a seed of doubt is planted, it can live quietly for years. I felt it. The stares, the hesitation, the subtle shift in tone when people spoke to me. But I did not bend. As the wedding date drew closer, Marcus and I made a joint, painful decision. Security would be stationed at the venue. My parents and Sophie would not be allowed to attend. It felt like cutting the final thread between us. But maybe that thread had been strangling me all along. The night before the wedding, I sat alone at my vanity, the lamplight soft against my reflection. My cheek had healed, but I could still feel the echo of the slap, not on my skin, somewhere deeper. I wasn't the same woman who stood in that restaurant. Something in me was stronger now, sharper, steadier. Love didn't have to be earned. Worth didn't require permission. Family wasn't always blood. Marcus knocked gently and stepped inside, his presence filling the room in the way only his did. "You ready?" he asked. I met his gaze in the mirror. "Yes," I said. And for once, I truly meant it. Even then, I had no idea what Sophie was about to try next. No idea how far she was willing to go. No idea how dark this would become. The morning of my wedding dawned quiet and golden, sunlight spilling gently across the rolling hills of Hollow Creek Vineyards. The ceremony space had been arranged exactly as Marcus and I envisioned months ago. Rows of white chairs facing a wooden arbor draped in soft cream fabric and woven greenery, roses tucked throughout in shades of blush, ivory, and pale peach. The vineyard stretched outward in gentle waves of green, the breeze carrying the scent of summer grapes and warm earth. It should have felt like peace. It should have felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. But beneath the calm exterior, there was a tension coiled tight in my chest, a sense that something was coming, something sharp, something inevitable. Lana helped fasten the final row of tiny pearl buttons down the back of my dress. Her movements were careful, quiet, steady, the opposite of the chaos that had defined the past few months. The gown was simple, elegant, fitted through the bodice and cascading softly to the floor. I had chosen it because it felt like me, not the me I had been forced to be, but the woman I was becoming. "You look like someone who finally knows her own worth," Lana said softly, stepping back to admire me. I met her eyes in the mirror. For the first time in my life, I whispered, "I do." There was a soft knock at the door. I knew the pattern instantly. 3 taps. Pause. 1 tap. "Marcus, can I come in?" he asked through the door, voice warm, gentle. "You can't see me," I called back, smiling despite everything. "Then I'll talk to the door," he replied, and I could hear the grin in his voice. I walked to the door and rested my palm flat against it. On the other side, I felt his hand mirror the gesture. We stood like that for a moment, saying nothing. "No matter what happens today," he murmured, "I'm yours, and you're mine." Emotion tightened my throat. "I know," I whispered. We didn't need more words. The ceremony began. Guests took their seats. Music swelled softly. The world seemed to slow, warm, bright. When I stepped onto the aisle, I walked alone, Not because I had no one, but because for the first time, I was choosing myself. As I walked, heads turned. Some smiled with genuine happiness. Others observed with curiosity, whispers already circling about my family's absence. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. I owed the world no explanations. When I reached Marcus, his eyes glistened. He didn't look at the dress. He didn't look at the orchestra of flowers or the guests or the scenery. He looked only at me, as if the world was something distant, secondary, irrelevant. And just like that, I was home. The officiant began speaking, her voice warm and resonant, weaving words of commitment, trust, partnership. But she had barely reached the midpoint of the ceremony when the energy shifted. It was small at first, a rustle among guests, a shift in posture, a tightening of air. Then, movement near the entrance. Sophie, she was dressed in white, not ivory, not champagne, white, a wedding gown, elaborate and loud and intentionally attention-seeking, lace cascading, tulle swelling dramatically, a train trailing behind her like a declaration of war. She walked slowly toward the ceremony space, chin high, steps deliberate, eyes locked on me. Gasps rippled through the guests. Security stepped forward, blocking her path. Sophie didn't falter. She smiled, sweet, sugar-laced poison. I'm here for my sister, she said, voice clear enough to carry across the vineyard. My pulse hammered. The officiant looked at me, waiting for instruction. I took a slow breath and nodded to security. Remove her. Sophie laughed. Of course. Of course you'd embarrass the family again. It's your specialty, isn't it? Marcus stepped forward, voice steady but sharp. You are not welcome here. Leave. But Sophie wasn't finished. She turned toward the guests, her voice rising theatrically. Elena stole from our family, she cried. She took money that wasn't hers. She ruined our mother's life. She destroyed us. A hush fell. People didn't look at Sophie with sympathy. They looked at her with shock, with discomfort, with dawning recognition of something deeply wrong. Still, she pushed forward. She doesn't deserve happiness. Sophie screamed, voice cracking. She doesn't deserve any of this. I stepped toward her, not with anger, not with panic, but with a clarity I had earned through pain. You are responsible for your life, I said quietly. Not me, not Mom, not Dad. You. I spent years thinking I had to bleed so you could breathe. I refuse to do that anymore. Sophie's face twisted. Tears welled, not soft, vulnerable ones, but hot, frustrated ones. Tears of someone who had lost the ability to manipulate. Security guided her back. She fought. She cursed. She swore revenge. But it didn't matter anymore. She was no longer a threat. She was simply loud. And loud does not mean powerful. When the gates closed behind her, a hush settled over the crowd again. A fragile silence. The kind that appears right before something important happens. I turned back to Marcus. My heart raced. My hands trembled. But for the first time, the trembling felt like release, not fear. The officiant waited, eyes gentle. Shall we continue? She asked softly. I nodded. We spoke our vows. We exchanged rings. We kissed. And in that moment, the world felt new. Not perfect, not healed, but mine. The reception glowed into golden evening. Laughter replaced tension. Music swelled. Glasses clinked. Marcus held me close during our first dance, his hand warm at my waist, his breath brushing the top of my hair. You walked through fire to get here, he whispered. And I'm still standing, I replied. When the night ended, when the lights dimmed and the vineyard quieted, when the last guest left and the air settled into stillness, Marcus and I walked hand in hand beneath the stars. We were married. not in spite of the chaos, but in defiance of it. Over the following months, the court delivered its decision. The funds were legally, permanently, irrevocably mine. The judge criticized the lawsuit sharply, citing spite, coercion, and personal bias. My parents were ordered to cover my legal fees. Sophie received nothing. There was no apology. There never would be. But I no longer needed one. I cut contact. I blocked numbers. I closed doors. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. In peace. Sometimes you don't heal by fixing what's broken. Sometimes you heal by letting it stay broken and building something entirely new. I built a life with Marcus, a home filled with laughter, softness, and quiet mornings. A life grounded in mutual respect, not performance. A life where love wasn't something to earn, it was something to share freely. I learned that family is not defined by blood. Family is defined by choice. And I chose me. I chose love. I chose a future no longer shaped by the people who tried to diminish me. I did not get the mother I wanted. I did not get the sister I hoped for. But I got myself. And that was the first time I ever felt free.